You're listening to 13 Past Midnight with Steve Stockton.
The time of the Krampus is almost upon us. The eve of December 5th, known as Krampusnacht in some regions of the world, sees the arrival of a holiday figure meant to instill fear and nightmares for those who have not behaved as they should. A figure characterized by a long tongue, sharp teeth, curved horns, and hooved feet. Krampus is covered in furs, carrying bells, a bag or basket to steal away children, and disciplinary instruments in the form of chains or birch sticks. In Austria, the Krampus is sent the night before the feast of St. Nicholas to gather the bad children, beating them and or throwing them in his sack to take them away from their family and back with him. As someone not raised in this tradition, it is both intriguing and terrifying to think of how the holiday season would be different if I had been raised with the belief that the Krampus was a possible visitor. According to a friend who was raised in Austria, those who did not grow up with it find it fascinating. But for those growing up with true belief in the Krampus, it is a traumatic part of their childhood. I can agree with this assessment because, as an American who did not hear of this tradition until I reached adulthood, I find it absolutely fascinating. And a welcome way to continue a Halloween-like approach to Christmas. After all, I never lose the Halloween spirit, regardless of time of year. Perhaps my life would be much different if I had been told a devil-like creature could take me away if I did not behave. Always game for personal stories, I sent a barrage of questions to a dear friend asking about her childhood experiences with the Krampus. She explained that in her region of Austria, every child grew up with the story that St. Nicholas would visit on the 6th of December, bringing chocolates and sweets for the good kids, while Krampus shows up the night before with a birch stick to beat the bad children and a basket to take them away. In her village, teenage boys would get drunk, dress up as Krampus in furs, masks, and bells, and go from house to house, knocking on doors and chasing young children through the village with chains and birch sticks. She has a very vivid, traumatizing memory of Krampus coming into her home, chasing her around until she was screaming and sobbing, hiding in fear under the kitchen table. It wasn't until much later that she was told it was only her cousin. Ultimately, depending on how your parents wish to handle this tradition is how you end up feeling toward Krampus. Some parents clearly explain to their children that Krampus is just a story, and those creatures running around the village are only drunk teenagers out to scare younger children, while others utilize this tradition as a way to uphold discipline within the house. Be good, or Krampus will take you away. This tradition of a devilish figure appearing around this time of year is also upheld in places outside of Austria, of course, but it varies from region to region. Aware of this, I was inspired to interview one of my favorite illustrators and tattoo artists, Jakub Vanieš, known as the Raven from the North, who grew up with a slightly different version from the Czech Republic. The Raven from the North is known for his amazing artwork depicting various figures from literature, myth, and lore, with a heavy focus on those from Norse mythology. Although he does not have any specific traumatic memories from his childhood, he made sure to emphasize that he behaved, after all. Jakub explained a few aspects of what he grew to know from Czech tradition. Mikuláš, similar to St. Nicholas, dresses with a hat, robe, and staff, visiting children on December 5th. Possessing a list of good and bad children, Mikuláš is accompanied by angels and devils. Going from home to home, the angels treat good children with sweets and fruits, and the devils give bad children coal and potatoes. The devils usually have long tongues and carry chains in a bag to take bad children away from their families to hell, if necessary. They have bells and make creepy noises that allow them to be heard from quite a distance away, allowing children to be properly terrified before they appear at the door. In the end, however, everything turns out just fine with Mikuláš and the angels being present. Just as in Austria, Jakub explained that teenagers and or adults will dress in costume and are able to be hired to scare and treat your children as motivation for good behavior. Even without being hired, however, older students tend to dress as devils to scare their younger classmates in school, making this an experience that is difficult to avoid for any child. Episode 98 of Into the Fray Radio consists of an interview with author Chris Krolstrom, who wrote Drawn to the Dark, Explorations in Scare Tourism Around the World. In this book, Kolstrom outlines her year-long trek across 11 countries to locate and experience scare tourism in various cultures. One of the most intriguing chapters covers her time attending multiple louths while in Austria. Not only does she cover the whippings she received at the hands of various Krampuses, a badge of honor, really, but also she discusses the differences in the costumes based on from which region each troupe hails. My favorite aspect of Kolstrom's Krampus chapter is when she interviews Clemens, a man who has played Krampus since he was 8 years old. Clemens, who has a master's degree in psychological marketing, offers his thoughts on why people wish to attend such an event that could result in bodily injury. People want limits, he said, especially young people. They don't get that in today's society. But young people want discipline in a controlled, safe environment. From a beast, though, not a human being. A lot of people come to the louths not because of the costumes, but to get beaten. I hold the guy in the left hand and punish him with the horsetail, full power, and he's very proud of the wounds. This is a game. This is a cultural game. In Al Reidenauer's book, The Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas, Roots and Rebirth of the Folkloric Devil, it is noted that many of the Louth participants stick to familiar faces within the crowd when it comes to intimidating or whipping anyone, although that isn't always the case. Reading the crowd seems to be a necessary trait while portraying Krampus. It is also noted that, at least in Dorfgestein, there is a trend for teenage boys to be the spectators most likely to taunt Krampus, in an attempt to show off to their peers until they are old enough to portray Krampus themselves. Of course, it is easy to understand how this kind of tradition can quickly get out of hand, particularly when alcohol is involved. An article from a few years ago details the assault of 5 teenagers by a group of out-of-control Krampus during a Krampus loft in Salzburg, Austria, which ultimately ended in some of the children being hospitalized. This isn't to say that there isn't inherent danger for those portraying Krampus. Reidenauer notes that alcohol consumption can cause particularly brazen spectators to attack Krampus, ripping at the horns, causing neck injuries for the actor. Platform shoes worn to create height, coupled with limited visibility within the masks, can also create a dangerous situation for Krampus and those nearby. There are other risks that accompany the use of fire and pyrotechnics naturally. It would be nearly impossible for me to not be enraptured by this tradition in all of its forms. I was not raised with the fear of Krampus, and live most of my days longing for hints of the creepy and weird that are usually only largely acceptable during the Halloween season. As such, when my children came home from school a couple of years ago proudly explaining how they learned of the Feast of St. Nicholas, I told them that they can't fully understand that aspect without Krampus. We spent time watching Krampus Lofts on YouTube, and we now proudly own a lightweight Krampus mask, which my children love to wear at all times of the year. I hope you enjoy this time of the year too, and remember, behave, or Krampus may stop by for a visit.